Hey everyone, so I'm going to talk about a topic that has been around in my thought for quite a long time. It sort of kind of saved my life, this kind of thinking, so I wanted to share it with you guys. I already have a video on YouTube about it, but it's kind of old. And I just wanted to kind of update with what I'm seeing now. Not much has changed, but anyways, human instincts and hierarchies, basically. So I'm going to redefine instincts. This is how I'm choosing to define it, is that it's a collective of evolutionary, it's a collection of evolutionary behaviors that are inherited to promote survival, basically, is that's what instincts are. So you pass them on. They've been passed on for millions of years through all of our animal ancestors, all of our instincts. They promote survival. And obviously each iteration of species is going to update whatever instincts they're passing on, right? So first of all, we're going to sort of talk about categorical thinking. We're going to use categorical thinking here to just try to process what's going on here. Obviously, these categories are made up. There's no actual any kind of categories. And I mean, like, even I want to put this disclaimer too, that male and female are also kind of categories when we're talking about gender, and not sex, but I guess with gender, we're sort of making up these categories: what is male, what is female. And obviously, when we're talking about male, we're talking about a clustering, the average of what male is, and a clustering the average of what female is. So just remember that there's overlap between things when you do categorical thinking. All right. So instincts, they utilize fears and desires, pleasure and pain in order to promote survival, right? They're going to trigger all of our desires in order to promote survival. And it's just going to come from evolution. It's going to be default. It's going to be wired into us. We're not even going to know that we're being driven towards survival. And so that's kind of what happens. Now, obviously, because we're doing categorical thinking, there's going to be overlaps between categories. There's going to be spaces where categories don't really cover. So just keep that in mind. And so, yeah, basically what the three categories that I've decided on are individual survival, because we need to survive individually in order to procreate, in order to continue the species, and we need a collective survival as well. And the collective survival is kind of like the new one, that it's a newer one that I didn't figure out on my own. I sort of got it from Richard Dawkins. But what's kind of annoying is I'm not the biggest fan of Enneagram, and it's kind of agrees with Enneagram. So, and Enneagram even calls it instincts. It's really kind of annoying. So anyways, yeah. But this is from a book I was writing back in 2004. And you'll see that I don't have the collective survival here. I didn't really think about this back then yet. All I did was I just sort of did thought experiments to get to procreation and individual survival. So there's three routes to instincts. For survival, nutrition is required. And again, 1 and 3 are the same. Survival, avoiding premature death is required. So both of these are individual survival. I sort of opened up the categories into two. But yeah, the thought experiment was you need to survive, you need to eat, you need nutrition, you need your body to work until you can procreate. And you need to avoid premature death until you can procreate, and then obviously raise the children afterwards. So these three routes branch into behavior in order to promote these routes, right? So just keep in mind, this is an old, I don't believe this anymore, that these are the three categories that we need to be thinking, and I'll tell you why. So Richard Dawkins in The Selfish Gene, and this is long before I thought about this. He talked about families, how they help promote every member's DNA because they have a shared DNA. So if I promote if I try to protect my brother's DNA, that means my DNA is getting passed on as well, because my brother and my DNA have a lot of shared DNA in them. And so he talks about the selfish gene is that, okay, whatever is going to help my DNA get passed on better is what my instincts are going to include, right? And so that's where you get collective survival. And then also the chances of individual survival go up when you're in a tribe or in a group as well, right? So this one sort of had to pop out. Okay, so, and then also, yeah, groups, they protect offspring, they help raise your offspring, they increase the likelihood of procreation, male-female encounters, right? So groups are very important. And of course, I forgot them back in 2004. So I'll throw in nutrition. for individual survival, it pops into nutrition. And here's what I wrote back in 2004. Bodily functions are all necessary for nutrition. Some of these instincts are so basic that like our brains don't even have full control over them, like our heart beating, that kind of thing. Right, yeah, try feeding a child who doesn't have hunger instincts, right? Okay. And what you'll notice is the audience I had back then, I realized the audience I have today is very different. The audience I had back then that I was writing for is more of a like a scriptural audience. And so you'll see that I'm including, I included back then some scriptural things. So like this is Proverbs. And I couldn't really take it out. This is basically what I wrote back then, but it doesn't detract from it. Basically, all it's doing is sort of saying, hey, someone else was saying the same thing as me, so you can listen to me. It's like, it's a way for me to appeal to them using scriptural quotes. So just sort of get past that. I know this is my audience today. You guys don't really care about it, but it's there. It's back from 2004. I can't change it anymore. Okay. And then avoiding premature death, like I said, they're the same. They fall both into the individual survival category, right? Now, and something written on avoiding premature death, territorial instincts, fear, right? Fear of death leads to avoiding death, therefore fear survives, right? So skip through that. And then you have certain mating strategies, which are instincts, right? In order to procreate, right? And the Darwinian kind of idea of mating strategies, there's like the monogamy versus diversification, right? Monogamy is like investing all of your energy in a low amount of children. So like humans, for example, we invest 9 months in gestation, and we invest a whole bunch of like 2 or 3 years before a child can even sort of walk and take care of itself. And yeah, 13 years before they can survive on their own, right? So it takes a lot of investment for every child. Mating strategies of monogamy and staying with one partner sort of are advantageous in raising a single child. And so we're going to have those kind of instincts, and primarily in mothers for humans, although lots of research has been done where it shows that in very closely related primates that mothers don't strictly follow this. They're basically fending for themselves in a very difficult way, and they sort of have to be a bit promiscuous to have other males sort of protect them. And then there's the diversification, obviously the mating strategy, where this is more going to be found in men, where men don't really have to get stuck with a child, males at least. They don't have to get stuck with a child after they don't get pregnant, that kind of thing. So the advantage to diversification is if you have a lot of children and maybe 50% of them die, well, your genes are going to survive, right? 50% of them live, even if 80% of them died, right? So the more children you have, the more diversified you are, the more chances that some of your children sort of survive. And so we as humans are kind of struggling with these two instincts. Again, men are sort of more, in general, men are more on the diversification side and women are more on the monogamy side because of the investment that women have. Okay. And then one of the instincts, like a very important instinct that is, we're going to talk about it, are the alpha instincts. And they're sort of in the middle. They come out of mating strategies, but they're important for collective survival because that's where all of our hierarchies come in, and they're important for individual survival because alpha, I don't know, there's an overlap. It's less important for individual survival, but for procreation, it's important because obviously the alphas are more likely to pass on their genes, right? Okay, so here I have back from 2004 again. So sexual attraction is obviously an instinct. It's something that we inherited. And then I have alpha male instincts here a little bit talking about them. And yeah, caretaking instincts, for example, it's very important for taking care of your children to raise them. Otherwise we won't survive, right? So these are all very instincts. So I'm going to have the old video in the description from 2014 where I talked about this, which this is basically where I found objective personality. Dave watched, I had no subscribers. Dave was like one of the only people that watched my video. I had like 3 views, and here he watched it 3 times. So it was probably all Dave. Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate you watching that. Okay, so let's talk about alpha female instincts first, because this for me is way more difficult to figure out, not only because I don't have the subjective element, but because they're way more complicated. So a few questions. Are there alpha female instincts? Are there alpha females? Do they exist? What would the instincts look like? Why would the instincts exist? And how would it help DNA survival, right? These are the kind of the questions. And I've been struggling with this for years. So I can see the alpha male instincts in myself. I can see them in others. I can see the benefit of it. I can see how it expresses itself. I can see how females are also involved in the alpha male instinct. And I've found an evolutionary source for where this sort of behavior came from, right? But what are the female instincts, right? So I'm thinking only a female can answer this. One, because first of all, it's super complicated. And second, because I lack the subjective element. I can't look inside myself and be like, oh, what am I driven to do, right? So, and I haven't really found a female who was able to explain this to me. And I think it's just because it's so complex. And there's lots of literature on this. So here, I'm going to dig into it. So here, alpha female instincts and bonobos. This is just some of the notes I took on, of how females behave in bonobos. They're very closely related. I got 2 pages on chimps here too, if you want to check out some of what I was seeing in chimps. And you see, it's like just really complicated. There's a lot of nuances here, and it's hard to isolate like a single sort of desire to become alpha female. You see that they're sort of kind of more stuck. Alpha females rise as they get older. They sort of accept their position more. There's no real challenge system for an alpha female. Alpha females get more nutrition, so it's advantageous. Females are way more bound by nutrition, and they're way more bound by the groups that they join. And so you'll see there's a lot of stress in alpha females in chimps and in bonobos, less in bonobos, but more in chimps, where they're going to go and look for a clique. Like I'm going to go back one. So females, they form cliques in chimps. They murder females that aren't a part of their clique, like new immigrants. And basically the only way you can join a tribe as a female is to leave your family. Female chimps all join another family. And so they're all going to be new somewhere. It's a very difficult process for the integration of females. And so they also form smaller groups, men form larger groups, this kind of thing. So it's way more complicated how the female instincts come into play. And yes, a lot of these instincts here, I'm back at the bonobo ones, you can still kind of see them in humans today. Obviously, we separated from chimps and bonobos, I don't know, 6 million years ago, something like that. And so they're very divergent in their instincts. And so our instincts are going to be very divergent as well, especially in the females. In the males, it's much less so. So let's talk about the alpha male instinct. So the other video I did, if you want to watch it, it's there. I looked at where is the source from. So I'm going to do that really quickly here. So we've got the entire sort of idea of the genetic tree, ancestor of life, all of evolution, right? And so we sort of came from, this is the zero time, like when life started, and then as you go outside of the circle, it's where we are today, right? So we can't really observe any of these creatures that were around there, but we can all look at what all is today on the outside of the circle. And you see that, birds are probably the more modern than mammals. We didn't come from birds. Birds are related to us only because we have a common ancestor way back here, but we can still look at birds for the instincts. So let's first look at mammals, all right? So yes, alpha instincts are present in mammals. They're present in herding animals. They're present in carnivores and felines, more elephants, rats, it's present in primates, canines, and even porpoises in the mammal kingdom. They do alpha battles, the alpha males, right? So the other thing is there's you can see it in play as well, because as children, they have to practice because one day they might have to do an alpha battle. So there's a lot of there's alpha play in dogs, there's alpha play in all of the mammals, right? And it's kind of cute when they're kids, but then it gets very dangerous when they're adults, right? And so here's what I wrote back in 2004. Basically, the entire thing, dogs can play fetch, and they compete in fetch, and you can see them sort of bragging when they're playing fetch. And so it's the idea that there's these complicated games, right? It's not only the physical battle, and you see this as well in the animal kingdom, where in chimpanzees, for example, it's not the strongest chimpanzee that usually is the alpha male. It's more an intelligent one who's able to form alliances and be more political, right? So we have many more complicated games, and we see the alpha in humans in a large array of different natures, based on the game, right? So wealth is a game, physique is a game, intelligence is a game, knowledge, religiousness, males compete there. They compete in military ranks, promotions, right? CEOs, entrepreneurs, all this kind of stuff. So a good question to ask is, what is your vision of the alpha male? And the other one is to ask as well to females, because females also have a vision of an alpha male, right? They're going to be naturally attracted to whatever their vision of the alpha is. And then obviously I wrote something as well back then about changing the game. I didn't include the whole thing, but yeah, if you see you can't win a particular game, you're going to try to change the game, right? If you're doing an alpha battle, if a man is doing an alpha battle with another man, they might try to change the game to arena where they can win, right? And obviously doing this too often isn't going to get you liked, if you're challenging everybody. And so there's also there's many different things at play here, but basically what I was saying is we probably all have to some degree these instincts to push us to become alpha, to push us to dominate other males, right? Okay, so that's in mammals. Oh yeah, so as well, you see what is the vision of the alpha in humans, and so basically we're not really aware of all of the instincts. We're aware of the results of the instincts, what we actually want. And so when we become alpha, we're aware that, hey, we get all of the mates. We get our pick and choice. The females are going to want us. That's our kind of vision of what the alpha is. These are harems, for example. You see as well nuns. They're all married to a single alpha. Mormons as well. This is kind of like a joke. This is Andy Kaufman's. What was his name? Anyways, he sort of played. It was one of his characters, but the character wanted to play the alpha. So what did he do? He did the same sort of thing, right? And you see in modern day, this character isn't actually an alpha. He's playing an alpha. He's, I don't know, hiring people. And this sort of image is very instinctual and basic. And if someone portrays themselves this way, other men are going to tune in, and they're going to say, hey, I want what he has. And he's able to sell courses and able to promote himself because he's portraying an image of an alpha, right? And obviously the king of rock was an alpha. Look at this. There's no men here, right? Why are all these women loving the Beatles? What's going on? Right. And yeah, this is just the way it's portrayed. This is the way men fantasize about it. If we become alpha, this is what we get, sort of thing, right? So, okay, let's look at other animals in the animal tree. Maybe it's present in other places. So let's take a look. Yep, there's alpha battles in birds, right? In pigeons, even. There's alpha battles in crocodiles, in like amphibians, reptiles have them, right? Frogs, fish have them, right? There's alpha battles in fish. So we're going further and further back in the evolutionary tree. These branched off from us. They obviously evolved, but they kept the alpha instinct, right? So what's going on here? Okay, let's keep looking. Let's look at echinoderms and protozoans, right? So yeah, crabs, lobsters, even snails, spiders have alpha battles. And this is the interesting one. This is the flatworm. And the reason why it's so interesting is it's present today, but it probably had an ancestor that did something very similar to this. And this is really what shows us where the source of the alpha male instinct comes from, right? Alpha female instincts are way more complicated, but the alpha male instinct, it was very simple, and it stayed the same through all of the species, and it's still here today. It's still present today. and it's underlying a lot of our instinctual natures, right? Okay, so what's interesting about this species is it's hermaphroditic. There are no males, yet it still does battles, right? And so what is the purpose of these battles? The battles are in order to impregnate the other, right? And whoever is strongest, whoever can do the battles the best, is able to impregnate the most and is able to pass on their seed. And so it's a very sexual in nature sort of behavior. Now, this behavior is a behavior that leads to DNA survival, right? Any animal that doesn't have this behavior, that's going to fight and try to impregnate the other, is not going to be able to pass on their DNA as well, right? And so this behavior, they develop some kind of weapons. They sort of paralyze their opponent, and they impregnate the opponent, and then the opponent is out of the game while it's gestation, right? And you see these animals don't even really have brains. This is like pre-brain. This is pre-vertebrate, right? They don't have backbones. This is like such a basic instinct. So older behaviors are more instinctual and more primitive in our brain, right? They're harder to see, they're harder to get rid of. Like, they're just part of the most basic parts of our brain, right? And you see also it's kind of like a precursor for a mating dance as well. You see in the birds of paradise, they've got kind of like this mating dance that they're doing as well, because obviously birds, the female bird can escape, so they have to be enticed by the male. So you see as well, the alpha male instinct is also has evolved to have an alpha female that is attracted to certain traits that they see as alpha, right? And this happens in humans too. Same thing in spiders. For some reason, they also have this kind of dance that they do. So it's like a mating dance. This is also kind of like a mating dance where they're battling. It's like a battle. And we still sort of simulate this battle in our mating dances as humans. We sort of simulate a little bit of a battle, a chase, an escape, a chase, that kind of thing. Okay, so one of the things that was important that I talked about back in 2004 is rising above your instincts. How do we break free of these? Because if they're so ingrained, and so you'll see there's a lot of religious sort of ideas, but this is Maimonides. This is the book where the earliest book of typology that I saw, where he talks about intuition, he talks about sensing, he talks about thinking, he talks about feeling, and he talks about balance. And one of the things he does talk about here is good habits. And it's like, know that positive and negative character traits are acquired and reinforced solely through repetition of the types of conduct that stem from these traits. So numerous times over an extended period of time. You have to repeat this. When a person habituates himself to positive contact externally, he will acquire the virtues internally. And when he habituates himself to undesirable conduct externally, he will acquire these faults internally. So do, and then you'll acquire the habits and you'll acquire traits in order to keep this up, right? So also I talked about back then about martial artists, how they train so that they don't have to think in battle, right? So that it's automatic, so that it becomes habit. Same thing with musicians, right? Okay. Now, okay, again, these are not proper categories. These are just a few bunch of tactics that I was throwing at people in my book. So it's probably a way better way to organize all of this stuff. I'm just saying right now. So one of the ones was riding your animal. This one is interesting. It's just using your instincts in order to overcome other instincts, right? So I don't know, a very simple example here is if you want to wake up early in the morning and it's really hard to wake up, you can use an instinct to wake up. So you can use your ambition, or you can use something else. You can play a game with yourself. You can use your instincts, because they're very powerful things, in order to overcome other instincts, right? And also, yeah, group instincts. Okay, so belonging to a group. So I didn't say this is probably another category, but it's still the idea of riding your animal. It's still the idea, hey, let's use my instinct to belong, that I want to belong to a group, to choose a group that I want to belong to, right? Who decides what is the alpha? Well, maybe a group decides what the alpha is. And if the group has a better idea of what the alpha is, then maybe I'll join that group, right? If we're now in the personal growth space, we're in a group of personal growth, and we have alphas defined in our group, and we're going to sort of strive to become that vision of the alpha. just because we're part of the group. So the group instincts are going to be very strong depending on whatever type, whatever group you're part of, right? And like having proper role models and all that kind of stuff, right? Okay. So yeah, this is just more stuff on riding your animal that I wrote about back then. Yeah, I am not taking account, like I'm sorry about whatever I wrote, but yeah, just so you have an idea that I've been thinking this. Okay. Another one is we desire ends, right? What we actually desire is some kind of goal, some kind of end, right? And we're looking for the means to get there. We're trying to find the shortest path to get there, right? And and if you want to direct your instincts, you have to sort of choose a path, and your instincts will push you on that path, right? So say you're hungry, right? And you want food. And so there's a few different paths. You can steal the food, right? Or you can grow the food. That takes a long time. Or you can beg for the food, right? There's a bunch of different ways you can get the food. And so your instincts, your hunger instincts are going to push you to get food. And you're going to try to take whatever shortest path, the easiest path you can to take that food, right? And so if you meditate, you choose to see a specific path as the only path, that's the path your instincts are going to push you on. So you can direct yourself to take a path by using the instinct, the goal, right? So you say, no, I can't steal. I can't do this. I can't do this. I have to only get a job, right? And so now my hunger instincts are going to push me to get a job, right? And so that's kind of where the riding your animal comes in as well. So yeah, the rules, the laws, they're there for closing off paths. Obviously, there's a big difference between ancient civilizations with poor laws and modern civilizations with better laws. Laws are kind of important, even though I'm an EP. Like, I hate laws. I hate being controlled. I like freedom, but you kind of have to understand how laws are kind of important. The other thing is, laws give us a place where we oscillate around. And so if you make more stringent laws, we'll oscillate further away from poor conduct, I guess. Okay. Another one is creating a desire. So you can just also create a desire. So a lot of systems are around. I'm not saying any of them are really important, but prayer, for example, is a way to create a desire. NLP, affirmations, meditation, envisioning, like what's that other one? The code or something. All this kind of stuff is there to create desires. So it's, whatever works for you, take it. Canceling self. So I guess I didn't really write what canceling self was back then, but what I wrote was all positive desires stem from an emptiness or lacking of something, right? We only desire what we do not have. If we already had it, we can possibly desire it, right? So bitul, which is canceling yourself, in essence, give us the aspect of lacking. So you can create a lack in yourself in order to drive yourself to something, right? So no one wanted an iPhone before it existed. No one wanted running water in their home before that was invented and existed, right? So these are all voids that existed in the world, but we didn't see the voids yet. And so once we saw the voids, then we can have a desire to fill those voids, right? And so it's the same way. Expose yourself to greatness, people of good character, see where you're lacking and desire to be greater than what you are, right? That kind of thing. So if you have good role models, they can show you your voids in a way too. Eliminate your lacking and you eliminate desire to fill that lack, right? So this is where canceling self comes, is, wait a minute. If I'm going to cancel my lack, cancel my need, it's just suppressing your ego, I guess. So there's probably a bunch of different ways to suppress your ego, seeing how small you are, looking at how big the universe is, all this kind of stuff. It's important in order to rise above your instincts, because being a role model as well is a good way to rise above your instincts, because you're now going to want to rise above your instincts to show other people that it's possible, right? And so that's kind of also a drive that I've found. Gratitude, I also wrote about. Who's rich? The one who's happy with his portion. This is from a book 2,000 years ago of where all positive desires stem from an empty. I already wrote this. Yeah. Oh yeah, gratitude. So this is exactly what I wrote earlier. But if you're grateful for things, then you don't lack it, right? You're grateful for what you have. If you're always focused on what you have and what you don't, so then you're looking at you're not lacking anything. You're not wanting things that you shouldn't be wanting, right? So I don't know. I had more on gratitude, but it's very important to be have gratitude to rise above your instincts. And then freedom as well. There's two visions of freedom. I don't say what the second one is here, but I say it in the book. The first freedom is the freedom of the body, the animal freedom. This is the freedom to do whatever your body feels like doing. This makes you no different than an animal with a high IQ. An animal has little choice. It must follow the influence of its desires. Most animals have little power to override their desires. And even when they do, they only override it with another desire, right? Riding your animal sort of thing. So are we imprisoned completely by our desires? So yeah, freedom is also kind of a desire, but I mean, what are you going to be free from, right? Are you free from the law and you're free from societal pressures so that you could do what you want to do? Well, then no, because then you're just a slave to what you want to do. Are you free from what you want to do? That's the real freedom, right? Are you free from your own desires? Are you able to rise above them, right? So I don't remember what I meant here, but striving, trying to break free from your animal is another way to rise above, right? And then patience is a huge one. Fears and desires, they're immediate, and the intellect has time to step in if we're not impulsive, right? If you wait a little bit, your instincts will calm down, or you'll see your instincts. You'll have more clarity. So patience is also really important. Practice, however it is you're going to do it, right? Even in like courses like anger management and stuff like that, they teach you patience, right? That's the main thing you have to learn. Okay, yeah, these are just overly simplistic tips, right? There's probably many more. Use whatever works for you and share them too. Yeah, please share them in the comments. If you find something that worked for you that helps you rise above your instincts, please share them in the comments. And now, obviously, there's way more. This was like a shallow dive, right? So there's way more instincts out there. I only touched on very few of them. I'm sure there's way more that we're not aware of, but it's kind of the way I was thinking back then, and I'm still thinking about it now in that sort of way, that basically all of the problems in our society, all of our problems come from some kind of instinct somewhere, and our inability to rise above the instinct comes from us being too animalistic. Like instincts are obviously very important for evolution. They're very important for survival, right? That's why they developed, so that we can survive. But they're sort of carrying over. They're a part of us now today, even though we don't really need them anymore, right? So yeah, one of the examples I gave earlier is like, try feeding a kid who's not hungry, right? You need to have hunger. But today we become a slave to our hunger. We don't really need hunger. We can know in our intellect that it's important to eat, and we can schedule times to eat, and we can eat more properly if we didn't have this hunger thing and this desire for sweets and this, right? All of these desires that we have, all of these instincts we have for food are sort of getting in the way of us having proper nutrition, right? And so how do you rise above our animalistic desires for food and for sweets and things like this, right? So you can kind of see how this carryover, these desires are hurting us today, because we can rise above them. We know intellectually that if you don't eat, you die, but we still have the animalistic side to it. Okay. Anyways, I'm going on and on. But that's just basically the big overview of what I'm talking about with instincts. And yes, I'm kind of annoyed that Enneagram sort of called them instincts as well, and they said the same thing before I did. Anyways, so Enneagram might have some merit. Okay. Yeah. All right. Have a good one, everybody.